It's a great pleasure to welcome you all back to the Marketing Goodies by GottaBe, the lovely podcast that you've all been waiting for. Today, we're going to be discussing the importance of getting the language right. We have seen a number of communications, both in English as well as other languages, that haven't gone very well, including the government messages very often get misinterpreted or don't get the right translations. Today we're going to talk about how to get the translations right, why is it important to translate marketing materials and promotional messages to various languages, and how to make sure we get this right. That does mean not using Google Translate. I will be joined by lovely three ladies, professional translators who do this for a living, and they will share some of the best tips and also some of the worst tips you can do as a marketeer when it comes to translations. So without further ado, let me introduce you to today's panelists. I am greatly joined by Eva Edman.
Hi, hello.
I'm joined by Blanca Gonzalez.
Hello, bye.
And I'm joined by a lovely Alina Tintan from Inbox Translations.
Hi.
So, ladies, first of all, let me let you introduce yourself. Who could do this better than yourself? So I'll kick off with Blanca, if I could. If we could have a little bit more information about who you are, what you do, and what languages and services you offer to.
First of all, thank you, Tom, for this opportunity to share experiences in the translation industry. I'm Blanca Gonzalez, founder of Translators Village. It's a translation e-marketplace and a hub of translation experts that provide translation services in different language combinations and domains. I'm a native language Spanish speaker. I was born in Germany, where I spent my childhood, studied French at uni, lived 5 years in Paris, and lived in the US for a while, and in the UK, so speak some English as well. As for the translation industry, I have to say that I was born there, my father being a literature translator from German, Goethe, Bell, and tutti quanti.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that. Eva, if I could have you as the next introducer today.
Hi, I'm Eva from Transliteria Polish Translations. I'm a creative and helpful translator and transcreator working in English and Polish, offering personalized service for SMEs and large businesses. I'm also a certified legal translator, a member of the Chartered Institute of Linguists, and I'm also a sworn translator in the making, which means that I'm able to provide certified translations of legal documents into English. But very soon I'll be able to do exactly the same thing, but into Polish. I'm based in the UK, and I'm over 10 years in the business, which makes me think of myself as a bit old. But the good thing is it puts me in a comfortable position where I have the majority of my clients come from recommendations. So it's good to be a veteran. Yeah.
Great, thank you for having you for being part of today's call as well. And over to Alina, all the way down in Romania.
Hi, and thank you for the invitation to the podcast. It's going to be a very interesting discussion, I'm sure. So my name is Alina Cincan. I'm a Romanian English translator, a chartered linguist, member of the Chartered Institute of Linguists. I've been a translator for a bit over 15 years. I run Inbox Translation, which is based in the UK, but also we've just set up another one in Romania, where I'm currently based, trying to run it as well. Inbox Translation is an accredited translation agency, member of the Association of Translation Companies. As for me, as I said, I have 15 years experience. I speak 5.5 languages, which means Romanian, my native language, English, which is my second language, French, Spanish, Italian to various degrees of fluency, and the half comes from Portuguese, which I've been trying to learn for a while. And at Inbox Translation, we offer professional translation services mainly for B2B into a variety of language combinations from or into English.
Okay, thank you so much for that. It's a lovely panel to have today. So we're going to have an amazing conversation about getting the language right. So first of all, let me ask the most important question is, in your opinion, why is it important to get the translations right? If I could kick off with Eva, why do you think it's so important to do so?
It's a very big question, to be honest, and the reason for getting the translation right depends on the specialization. So, for example, in medical translation, it's important to get it right because you can save a life, right? In legal translation, mistranslation can lead to miscarriage of justice. So, get the translation right, and you get the justice right. As for marketing translation, it's getting the translation right means getting the branding right. So it involves getting the branding as you want it, right? Not, incorrectly or not in a poor way. It also depends on the function of the text that it needs, a role that it needs to play. If you have a marketing text that you want to use to drive traffic to your website, the translation needs to do exactly the same. If you want a marketing text to increase your sales, your translation needs to do exactly the same. So getting translation right is a big question, and it mainly focuses on what's the function of the text. You need to get not only the substance right, not only the subject and the meaning right, but also carry out the function of the text. It needs to have the same impression on the reader as the original.
Okay, thank you for that. Alina, anything to add from yourself?
I don't think there is much to add because Eva has covered it really well. I was about to mention the fact that there are fields like medical and legal where a bad translation can mean the difference between life and death, someone's life or death. Yeah. So in marketing, like Eva said, well, apart from attracting clients, with the translated text, which should sound natural and as compelling as the one you have written in the original language, it's also important not to alienate any potential clients, because a bad translation is exactly what it's going to do. I was just thinking of a certain brand I like. I mean, I do like the brand and I'm a loyal customer, but I cringe every time I see their ads or I go to their website because the translations there are not exactly top-notch. So don't alienate potential clients by having your website badly written or badly translated.
Okay, and that brings me on to the next point, which is obviously what are the most common mistakes that you see in translations? Blanca, if I could kick off with you, what do you think is the most common problem, and why do they sort of keep appearing and over time?
I think that regarding to translation itself, there is no much difference with any other languages and other services of languages that you outsource. So it can be marketing, it can be translation. It always is a mix that starts with a lack of planning. Because when you plan poorly, then you get a poor selection of the resources that you need, or the resources you need are busy with something else, so they are not available. And that comes that you finally take the wrong resource for doing what is very important to you. So also a second part of the unplanning part comes that since you don't have clear goals and you don't have clear instructions, then it is very difficult to get a kind of a realistic delivery date on what comes there. So it arrives late, then the whole process goes late, and not only timing, but quality, same thing. again, you don't have time to review, to check it, to make sure that all the instructions are followed.
Okay.
But that happens to translation, and that happens everywhere.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Alina, can I just get anything from you as an addition? Do you think there is something that it can be avoided when it comes to getting the translations wrong?
I think sometimes clients think of, for them, translation is just an afterthought. Like Blanca said, not enough planning. Because, for example, not offering maybe your translators enough context about your project. I'm just thinking of an app we had to translate. The client only had the concept of the app, so there wasn't actually an app to look at. So there was a complete lack of context, which made everything really, really difficult. For example, websites and apps, because I just mentioned that. One thing that clients need to consider is how flexible they are and whether there are any character limitations. Think of buttons. I'm sure Polish is one of the languages because we've translated apps in Polish, and I remember what the difficulties were with numbers, for example, with plural of nouns, and we had to switch things around with strings. So things that you need to discuss in depth with the translation team. So you have to plan properly in advance. So, and make sure you tell them everything you can, whether there are character limitations, what the context is, who the target audience is, which is really, really, really important.
Eva, Alina mentioned something about Polish translations. Anything to add from yourself?
Yeah, there are a few common mistakes when it comes to Polish translations, but I'm sure they will also apply to other languages, and they usually stem from translators translating literally from the original language. So we have this. You're welcome when you want to say in Polish zapraszamy. So get this offer should be the correct option, or something alongside, not you're welcome. If you want to encourage customers to use this offer or take part in something that you're organizing. The sentence structure is also an issue. Very often, so the translations carry the same sentence structure as the original, which sound awkward very often and incorrect, and calques. So the using exactly the same word, which is basically it looks and sounds very similar to the original word. For example, in English, you say you address the problem. And sometimes it's translated as adresować problem, which we don't really say that in Polish. We would say rozwiązać problem, so solve a problem rather than address it.
Okay, thank you. Blanca and Alina, you both mentioned that you obviously speak Spanish, so I would like now to ask the question to you in sort of French and Spanish. There's obviously different dialects, however, they don't necessarily mean the same thing, and even so that it's still the same language in various parts, it could mean completely different things and not necessarily is being understood. We've seen this also with the Portuguese language between Brazil and Portugal. So how do we get this right, and how do we ensure that for different areas or different countries we've got the right translation? So if I kick off with Alina on this one first.
Sure. Well, my Spanish is a bit rusty, but I'm not going to, we don't even have to go into specific examples. But yes, indeed, there are differences between the Spanish spoken in Spanish and the Spanish spoken in various other countries, because there are differences even between countries like Mexico, Venezuela, Argentina. So there are two things that you need to do in order to get it right. First of all is talk to as a translator or as a translation provider. The first thing you need to do is obviously talk to the client and ask them what is their target market, who is their audience. Are they going to launch their product in Venezuela? Are they going to launch it in Spain, Mexico, and so on? Same with French. Is it going to be for France? Is it going to be for Canada? So that's the main thing. Speak to your client if you're a translation provider, or speak to your translation provider if you are a client. And the second thing we need to do is obviously get the right team on board. So if you need something specifically for the Canadian market, you will need, well, a professional translator, obviously, but they will also have to be native speakers of Canadian French.
Okay. Blanca, as a Spanish speaker yourself, anything else to add here? Any problems that you see come up over and over again?
There's nothing specific. Really, kind of, if you look at Microsoft has this international standard Spanish, so where it depends what you want to translate and what your audience is. So that is really important. If you are translating marketing, you really want to be very close to your audience because you want really to be touchy and to get in there. So doesn't mean that sometimes I have had cases where they have put me to speak with an Argentinian guy to see if we understand each other. I mean, of course we understand each other. It's Spanish. I mean, it's and I love Argentinian accent, by the way. But it is not that. It is that if you are translating marketing, you really want to say it the way a local would say it. But it doesn't differ very much in the geographic kind of definition and where it is and what accent they have. It is age, it is cultural. What do you want? What is your audience? Where do you? What is your target? Is the important thing. Then, of course, I would never. I do translation into Spanish, not often, but sometimes I do because I love it. But I would never translate for Argentina or for Mexico or for any South American country because, of course, they say things sometimes differently, and we love it. We understand it perfectly, but it's more kind of to speaking the client language is what is important.
Sure. Very important, especially in the marketing world. Now I would like to move on to another question. Often when you order translations, you get this sort of almost like a deal. Someone's asking you if there is an option to have it proofread by another translator. I mean, what's the purpose of it? Surely if you're a translator, you should get the text right in the first place. Why do I have to pay extra of having this chat and, you know, having to pay extra for it? So why is it that we need to do this? So if I could kick off with maybe with Eva, if you've got something to add very briefly on this one.
Yeah, it's the same reason why books are being reviewed, edited, and proofread. It's the second pair of eyes that is absolutely essential to get things really right, especially when it comes to legal translation or medical translation, when you need to be accurate, when you need to remember about every single detail. So yeah, second pair of eyes, always crucial. Sometimes even third is good.
Alina, I will go to you because I know it's definitely a service that you guys offer. Having worked with you previously, whenever I get quote from yourself, there's always two options, and it's always that awkward thing where you got to go to a client and say, "Look, here is a translation, and this is what they can do." But they also would like to offer you a second pair of eyes looking at this and charging you extra for it. So how come is this still common thing?
Right. So I would like to say, the Latin saying, errare humanum est, so to err is human. But it's more than that. I mean, it's not just about translators being human and making errors. We also we do have lots of very good tools at our disposal to make sure that there are no typos, for example, or omissions in the text or things like that. But like Eva said, a second pair of eyes is crucial. Not only they can spot things that we may have missed, especially if it's a very tight deadline, for example. I don't know, things can go wrong. But also think of a marketing text. When the client writes a marketing text, I'm sure there is a team writing it, more than just one person looking at it, coming up with improvements. So same with translation. The second pair of eyes is there not just to spot errors, but also to improve the text. Like with books, like Eva said, a second pair of eyes can make sure the text is even better than it can be the first time.
Okay, so now moving on to it, we've sort of discovered the importance of getting the marketing right, the language right. How do we encourage more businesses to translate their marketing materials? I mean, do you have any tips and tricks? Have you seen anything that worked? Blanca, we kick off with you first.
It is very much depending on the client. Of course, if there are different messages that you can pass across depending on the kind of audience you have, same thing as in marketing. For instance, a multilingual communication may differentiate your client from their competitors. So that means that if you have a page only in one single language, having it in several languages, when none of your competitors has that, it's really kind of an asset for your company. A second message that can come across another client would be that people buy emotion, and the emotions really come in your native language much better than in other language. Even if I speak perfect English, as you can see now, if I get the message in my language, it comes across much more powerful, and even more if I am in a different country. So I'm a Spanish person in the UK, and suddenly I receive a message in Spanish. I mean, of course, that makes a whole difference. So if it is about marketing, message can come across in the audience language much better. So also kind of another thing that I would suggest kind of to clients that want to explore, it's kind of saying, oh, okay, don't start big, don't start doing the whole page that it's zillions of words, because it is a marketplace with a lot of products, and the page is huge. Why don't you start with a smaller landing page with a message that you will pass there? You kind of make it right. Yes, ideally, don't do a landing with Google Translate, even if you love it, and and then just kind of measure from there. See if suddenly you are hitting a different audience that with your page that was not translated before, and from there you start to build a whole plan for getting global and getting multilingual.
Okay, great. Eva, how do you persuade more businesses to translate into Polish? I mean, Polish is the second most spoken language in the UK. We're seeing more and more companies targeting the Polish community in the UK. But how do we get even more companies, even more organizations, businesses communicating with over 400,000 Poles living in the UK in Polish?
It's a matter of showing them that a translation is not a cost. It's an investment, and it's an opportunity for increasing revenue, basically. That's how, in one word. It's an investment. It's not a cost. It's not something you should do for the sake of it. It's because you will benefit from it. That's how we should show it to businesses.
Okay, so now we've understood in terms of what are the benefits, but why do you think there are still barriers, and why some businesses face those barriers? So what are the barriers, and why businesses are so hesitant when it comes to translating materials? Alina, what's your view on this?
I think the benefits that both Blanca and Eva mentioned are also related to the barriers. For example, some clients are simply unaware of the potential of growth. So encouraging them and showing them that they could reach more people, therefore bringing in more revenue, is is one way. So the barrier would be not being aware of the potential. Another one could be, and it is in most cases, budget, because a lot of businesses don't even take into account having their materials translated, and when they do, they might see it as as a cost that they can't afford. But like Eva said, they should see it as an investment. And some others might be reluctant because of bad experience in the past. I don't know. But I think the main two would be budget and not being aware of what they could achieve with having their materials translated.
Okay, great, thank you. Eva, anything to add to that?
Yes, I mean, when it comes to bad experience, as Alina said, it's mostly is this vicious circle. So a business, for example, would have a low budget or wouldn't initially even include translation in the budget. So they would then look for the cheapest language translation provider. They would have this bad experience probably, getting a poor translation or getting some, rubbish thing, and then not doing it at all in the future. So get it right the first time, invest, get a proper job done, and then you'll benefit from it, and your sales will increase. You will reach more customers, more audience, and your marketing campaign would be definitely more successful.
So you've touched base on getting this right. We have seen companies, even government organizations, getting it wrong. We've seen these common mistakes coming and appearing over and over again. I know Alina mentioned you've mentioned about sort of poor translations on packaging. So do we think Mr. Google here is to blame, or is it something different? Is it just the fact that people assume they know the language and they can translate it? So let's sort of take this question in two forms. First of all, what's the sort of view on Google Translate? I know a lot of people tend to use it on their websites, and do we sort of love it or hate it? Is it like with Marmite? Do we love it or hate it? How do we overcome this problem? And how do you overcome this problem in your business as well? So Alina, I know you're smiling and you're loving this comparison to Marmite. So let's go with love or hate first.
Right, because you spoke of Marmite, and may I just say that if someone used this cultural reference in their materials, it would definitely not come across. It cannot be translated into other languages, so a totally different reference would be needed. Things that, for example, Google Translate would not be able to do, because Google Translate, so machine translation, cannot pick on cultural references and nuances. So from my point of view, there is really no comparison or no competition between Google Translate and a professional translator. Google Translate has its purpose. It's a good tool. For example, when my parents go abroad, because they do like to travel, well, not this year, obviously, sure. But when they go abroad, because they don't speak other languages, Google Translate can help them get the gist of, I don't know, something they want to see what's written on a package on a shop or something. Sure. So it's the same for everything. So it can help you get the gist of something, of a message, of what's written on a website, but that's all. If you want something well written, you need obviously a professional translator. So we love Google Translate on the one hand for some things, but obviously for anything else, you have, well, not MasterCard, for everything else, there's a professional translation.
Okay, Blanca, I can see you're also smiling there. So what's the reasons behind the sort of, and the issue that you want to sort of eliminate Google Translate away, or how do you sort of, use this potentially as a barrier potentially, also when talking to your clients?
I would say that Google Translate is not a barrier. It's really something that doesn't work against the translator, but it works with the translator. I mean, of course, it is a free tool and it requires validation. And depending on the domain, there are some domains or languages combination and so forth. It can be a real joke. Jokes are always good, but but you have to think as well that very often a client only wants to know what a page says and what it speaks about. They did a Google search and it says, oh, this page, and it is in Russian. And you say, okay, is that page interesting for me or not? So you pass it through Google Translate and suddenly it is about something completely different. And then you just kind of change into something else, but suddenly it's something that you're really interested in. And as a result of it, they may decide to translate something that otherwise they wouldn't have not even thought in translating. So again, it's really something that helps everyone to make a first impression, which is quite good. So using it as your final marketing product, it is a joke. Yeah. So
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for that. And now I wanted to sort of touch base on the industries. I know we obviously talked about marketing and using marketing for translations, but do you think there are specific industries that lead when it comes to translations, getting languages, communications, or any sort of materials out there? Is there any particular one that you think, is the one that really leads and is the one that, other industries should follow ever? What's your view on that?
For me, I think mostly applications, apps are very often, well, not translated, they're localized, which is a new term to be introduced here. Localization means adaptation to the target market, not just translating the text. It's a lot of other additional things which we don't have to cover today. But apps, localization of applications, fintech companies as well, and e-commerce with global brands, obviously would sell worldwide. Their websites and marketing materials are translated quite a lot. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Alina?
I would say, well, marketing material, if we're thinking of fields that get their materials translated, so marketing materials is one thing that we see. What I want to say, marketing departments are most likely to have their materials professionally translated, because as marketing people, they understand the importance of a good text. But also, it's not just about the field, it's also about the companies. So in this, even companies in the same field will view translations differently and the need for translation or professional translation differently. It will depend on the country they are based. For example, if you think of two really giant marketplaces, Amazon and AliExpress, there is a huge difference between the way they deal with their website in terms of language. So it's not just about the industry, but also about location.
Okay, thank you. Both Alina and Blanca, I know you obviously employ various other translators to support you with the languages that you don't speak, but you offer to your clients. So my question is, how do you ensure you get the right people for that right job? Obviously, the clients that choose to work with your businesses, whether that's Inbox Translation or Translators Village, obviously rely on you getting this right. So how do you select the right people for their job? I mean, Blanca, if I kick off with you first.
Oh, the good news is that we still are not replaced by machines. So we are still here for a job. And kind of answering your question, I think that the most important thing is really to get the personal contact with the translator. So speaking their language, and I don't mean Chinese, Russian, Romanian, or Polish, but it's kind of their way they transform the words. Understanding their weak points, it's very important. And this is universal in every industry as well. And And this, knowing the translator will make you to decide if a translator is suitable for the translation needs that the client has. So it is not looking for the best translator itself. I mean, depending on the need of the client, it may be someone very specialized or very market, as you mentioned before, that is very locally placed in the where the target audience is. So the needs may differ. So that is the beauty of the translation, that it encompasses such a variety of things that you have to do the mix properly. It's like a good cocktail.
Ooh, I like that comparison. Alina, how do you make a right cocktail? So how do you make that perfectly good cosmopolitan or Mai Tai or whatever it might be to get the right people to do the right translations for your clients?
I don't know much about cocktails. I can make a very good coffee, but no cocktails.
Cheers.
So yes, getting the right person for the job is not easy. For example, I employ people even for the languages I speak, because I speak Spanish, well, to some degree, but I would never translate professionally from Spanish. But all it boils down to is the recruitment process. I mean, I'm in a very good position right now after so many years in the industry, because I have a very good network of translators I collaborate with. So I know them, and I know a lot of them personally. But when I don't, one of my first ports of call is professional associations, because obviously they've gone through a process there, making sure they have the right qualifications and specializations. And this is going back to what Blanca said. If your client is a legal firm and they have a contract to translate, you need a legal translator, you need a specialized translator. You just don't need someone who speaks the language. Even if they're a professional translator, if they usually translate marketing materials, asking them to translate a contract might not get you the same results. But making sure that you are working with the right people starts with doing your due diligence and some research.
Mm-hmm. Marketing and translating is of course kind of go hand by hand, but very often it also is this whole issue of where do we put a pound sign? Is it a comma or is it a dot? What are the sort of different nuances that they come across? So I know, for example, with the Polish zlotys, you put it at the end, whilst with the pound, you put it in the front of the price. So I've got an example on the screen of $4.99 versus $4.99, but they could mean completely two different things depending on who's looking at it. Eva, if I could start with you with this whole issue of putting the pound and dots in the wrong places.
Yeah, I'm very watchful of the dots and commas because, for example, in an agreement, in a contract, they could mean a lot. There's a huge difference between a dot and a comma, believe you me. Yeah, I always have to check when you have currencies like PLN for Polish zloty and then, for example, EUR for euro. And again, there's the thing where they should be positioned at the front or at the back. I always need to double check because I'm always confused sometimes. But yeah, I need to check that. Anyways, yeah, the little things that you need to be aware of, and you need to be very diligent with, very careful not to get them wrong. Yeah.
Alina, anything to add from yourself with regards to dots and putting the pound signs in the wrong places?
Well, I think professional translators don't actually make these sort of mistakes, like getting their commas and dots mixed up. But for example, so it's not just about currency whether it's a dot or a comma, or if the currency goes before or after. There's always, so one thing to consider, for example, is think of even if we mention currency, if you are selling the product in a different country, maybe you should consider converting the prices into that local currency. And obviously, it's not just going to be the difference in currency, but also a difference in the numbers. Think of units, imperial versus metric system. Let's not even go to gallons or tons, which are different if you think even in English, American and the British system. And also, because I mentioned British and American English, for example, if you say second floor, it's different if it's in the US and it's different if it's in the UK. So I think first start with ground floor is in the UK, is first floor in the US. So that's another aspect that you need to consider.
Okay, thank you. And before we sort of conclude on the conversation, I know very often translators got various stories, fans and giggles that they call it. I can see lovely smiles across all of your faces, so I'm sure there are stories that you would like to share with us. So if I maybe start with Alina, because I know you really can't wait any longer, so I'll let you go first on the fans and giggles.
Right. Okay, so the most interesting and one of the most fun projects that we worked on was a letter addressed to someone's neighbors, asking them to be more discreet and less loud when having sex. So that was a really, really fun project to work on.
Okay, I mean, Eva, I can only hope you've got a better story to overcome this.
Alina has set the bar very high.
Anything
I can only add interpreting, actually not translating and writing, interpreting during a meeting, swear words. And of sexual themes as well. But swear words. Messages are always fun because they're different topics and very interesting contents. Messages are very fun to translate. One of them was very intricate. It was very weird and hardly made any sense. So it was very difficult actually to, even though it was in Polish, it was written in such an weird way that I can hardly get the meaning of it. But and there were weird words not to be said in this context, in this setting. So probably let's move to Blanca then.
Okay, over to Blanca. It is very difficult to choose a funny story, really, because when you get older, you have a lot of them. So, but I would say that a hard to forget experience. It's also in the interpretation world that many people call translation. So let's say as a joke that we are still in translation. So it was a client that wanted me to help participants requiring assistance that were participating in a karate championship. Okay, they wanted me to assist the doctor and understanding what the injured party had to say, but the poor athlete was always speechless. So they moaned in pain and they held hard, worked hard most, and the doctor listened to the body language and made its own interpretation about all of it. The pain, it's a very universal language, and the only thing I could do there is to convey with words of encouragement, and they were universal as well. I don't even remember what language I was speaking. So that was kind of a funny story about this interpretation experience. So my thing is that another short story, it's that for me, speaking different languages, it is already kind of a jiggle, because I'm a very serious person. I never make joke. I don't know how to make jokes. It's not in my way. But when I speak a foreign language, since I do mistakes, people laugh. And I'm so happy that I make people laugh because I usually don't. So that's just a funny story about it.
Okay, wonderful. I mean, ladies, it brings me on to the conclusion that it is important to get the language right. It is important to select the right translator, but most importantly, ensure that your marketing materials is collated not just with the information that you're looking to translate, but also you've got other information available, so you can get the content and the whole content right. Is there anything else that, as a one piece of advice that you can give to marketeers, people that are potentially going to be your clients, how to make your job easier in future? Alina.
Offer as much context as possible. Tell them everything you can about your audience and what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you. Blanca, anything to add from your perspective in terms of one top tip for future?
Yeah, I would say that same thing as Alina mentioned. I kind of don't think translator as your vendor, but as your partner. Share information, share pain, and make sure that you will get the best out of it.
Okay, and last not but least ever, anything to add from yourself?
I definitely agree with the ladies. A good, solid brief is more than enough. I mean, it's crucial. It's absolutely crucial. Answering questions on a timely basis is also a good point. If a translator has some, questions related to the original text, the collaboration, just being, communicate, collaborate, and treat us as partners.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for being part of the Marketing Goodies by GottaBe podcast and the vlog. It was great to have you with us. Wish you all the best with your businesses and look forward to seeing you soon, hopefully back here talking and discussing a different marketing topic related to the language. This was the Marketing Goodies by GottaBe, a great podcast for all the marketeers out there. So make sure you subscribe and you stay tuned in for more content coming your way very shortly.